afternoon. Let's go ahead and get started today. I know you're all very busy county employees and you need to get back to your work, and I want to respect your time. Welcome to all those joining us today and to anyone who's joining us through the miracle of technology at a later date. Today's Washoe Talks presentation is a partnership between the Training, Learning, and Leadership Committee and also between the Washoe Express Toastmasters Club. My name's Chris Riley from the Washoe County Public Defender's Office. I'm a member of that Training, Learning, and Leadership Committee, and I'm also a longtime Toastmaster. So let me tell you what the Training, Learning, and Leadership Committee does. I'll then tell you what Toastmasters does, and finally, I will stop talking so we can get to our dynamic speaker today. The Washoe County Leadership Program is an employee-led engagement program. The Training, Learning, and Leadership Committee supports program development, identification, and evaluation for existing and new opportunities to ensure the needs of employees and organization are met. What we know about effective leadership is it requires effective communication. That's why we're so happy to partner with the Washoe Express Toastmasters Club today. The Toastmasters program is an international nonprofit educational organization that teaches public speaking skills and leadership skills through a worldwide network of clubs. The Washoe Express Toastmasters Club is the club that calls the Washoe County Complex home. How many of you knew that there is a Toastmasters meeting that meets right here in this very building? Awesome. How many have you been to? How many of you? Nothing. Okay, so part of what we're also doing today is extending you the opportunity and the invitation to attend one of those meetings. We have the current president of that club here, and we'll provide you with more information about that once you're dazzled by our speaker and want to know more about learning public speaking. Our speaker today is one of the most energetic people I know. She wears many, many hats in her daily life, and I don't think I've even captured them all today. While she's a longtime Washoe County resident, she travels all over the country and the world talking about her business, many business pursuits. She's a DJ. She's authored 4 books. She owns a popular trivia company, and she has a weekly podcast. She's also a mother of 4. Today, our speaker will be wearing the hat of Certified Personality Trainer, teaching us to understand personalities within our workplace so that we can improve communication, show appreciation, and build stronger teams. I'm grateful she's willing to share her valuable time today, and I'm pleased to call her my friend. Will you please help me welcome Vickie Musni, the Power of Personalities? Vickie Musni.
Thank you, Chris. What a warm welcome. Thank you all for spending your lunch hour with me here today. I absolutely love sharing about personalities, and I find there are so many avenues where you can apply this information. So even though I will try to keep my examples business focused because we are here in a business work setting, I'm sure there will be times when I'm speaking where it will remind you of a certain person in your family, someone you are married to, live with, maybe gave birth to. You'll see personalities everywhere. And I like to start out by reminiscing about my favorite movie as a child. Now, some of you are not old enough to remember this, but when I was a little girl, we had to wait until a certain day of the year when The Wizard of Oz came on. And we had to be home at that time because if we missed it, we would have to wait a whole year to be able to watch it again. I love The Wizard of Oz. Now, I didn't love the beginning. The beginning it set this tone for the story and it set the setting, but it was kind of boring. And then, something happened, something came and shook Dorothy's world. And then it caused her to see everything and everyone around her differently. Even though my promise to you today is not that I'm going to take you to a magical, mythical land, I do hope that I can shake a few things up in the way that you think about the people that you work with, the people that you come into contact with, those around you every day, your coworkers, as well as the clients and the community members that you serve in whatever your area is. Personalities is not new. In fact, I'm sure most of you in this room have taken some kind of personality test, am I right? At some point in time? Okay. I didn't invent the study of personalities. In fact, the research that I studied goes back to 4000 BC. It's been around a long time. The only thing that's new is how people explain it and how they try to help you apply it in real life. So my goal is to teach a system that is so simple that you can start applying it almost immediately. I'm not a big fan of taking 90% of the time to talk about how it works and then, maybe 10% about why this matters. So we're gonna dive in. Because every person that we interact with has a personality. And we know this. This is not news. You know that there's some people that you meet and you love working with them. And there's some people that you just click with naturally. And there's some people that you don't click with. And that's just as real. And sometimes it's just a matter of understanding that they have a different personality type from you. Okay, we've acknowledged that most people have taken a personality test. This happens to be my favorite. Anybody familiar with Wired That Way? It's my favorite test of all of them that I've taken and read about and been exposed to and tried. You can get it on Amazon for $3 or $4. It's a little 8-page book, and it has 40 questions in it. It's a great test. If you are the head of a committee or the head of a department, this could be a great tool for you in getting to know people and saying, hey, we're gonna have a team building exercise. Let's all take this test and get to know each other better and figure out our strengths and weaknesses. It measures 20 of the most common strengths for each personality type and 20 of the most common weaknesses and gives you a fairly accurate profile. But what it's not good for is walking up to someone that you just met, or maybe a boss that you work for, and saying, hey, I'm really having trouble figuring you out. Could you take this 40-question test so I can understand you better? And we know in most situations, that's not going to fly. And I make fun of it almost and being silly because we can't say that, and we know that. So my goal is to make it so simple that you can just start looking at yourself and the people around you and start what I call seeing them in color. Color is the metaphor that we're going to use for the 4 personality types today. And yes, there are lots of systems that use 4 words, 4 animals, 4 whatever, but we're going to use colors for a couple of reasons. One, if you look around the room and I said, look at something blue, how many different shades of blue do you see? I mean, you have several on your dress and your sweater right there. But I see blue over there that's different than that blue, that's different than that blue, different than your navy blue. But our brains recognize them all as blue. So I'm not trying to say that every blue personality is exactly the same, but there's something about them that we can identify as being blue. So when we talk about these color personality types, again, my goal is not to help you put people in a box just for the sake of labeling them, but it's to try to help you understand that person better. And maybe you can make a small adjustment in the way that you conduct yourself, the words that you choose, the tone that you use when you speak to that person to help get your message across a little bit better. Our tendency is to speak to people the way that we like to be spoken to, isn't it? I mean, the way we process information seems normal to us because it's the way that we think. So yes, I'm going to speak to you, unless I'm thinking about it consciously, the way that I like someone to communicate with me. It's like the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It's great for some things, moral decisions, ethical things, but not necessarily for communication. If we want to communicate effectively, we need to communicate the way the other person likes to be spoken to. We can't change those people to make them think like us. I mean, let's be honest, have you tried? Right? We all have. It doesn't work. But you do have complete control over what you do, what you say, and how you say it. So after you leave today, you will have some new tools in your toolbox for ways that you can communicate, get your message across more effectively, and hopefully grow your team, serve that person better, be better at communicating in whatever your niche is. To talk about seeing the world in color, we have to identify those personality types. We've already established it's not practical to make people take a personality test. So we have to be able to identify them without a test. To do that, I'm going to give you 3 different traits. If you're a note taker, you might want to just go ahead and draw 4 little boxes on your page, and I'm going to give you 3 keywords for each one. If you're not, I'm not offended. I know that not every personality likes to take notes. If you want to take photos of my slides, be my guest. Not a problem. Here's the other problem I run into. All of these personalities are wonderful. They're all equal. There's not one that's better or best than the other, but I can't teach about all 4 of them at the exact same time. I get a pretty good word mileage, I can speak a little quickly, but I'm not that good. So I have to start somewhere. So I'm going to start with the personality that's the easiest to identify. And that's what I call the yellow personality. So if you are taking notes, you want to put this in the top left quadrant. 3 words that are the most common identifiers. Again, not every yellow is going to have all of these traits to the same degree, but these are some visual and verbal clues that might help you go, oh yeah, that person is probably a yellow. The first one is loud. You can hear a yellow from across the room, no microphone needed. You hear them laughing a little bit louder than the rest of the people in the room, sharing their stories a little bit more loudly. They like to be the center of attention. We're the ones that when we're at a restaurant and we're telling a story and the people next to us are kind of straining to hear our story, we don't mind having a bigger audience. We're just going to speak a little bit more loudly so they can hear us better. That's what yellows do. We're loud. And I'm talking about loud in voice, but also loud in dress. Often when you see someone with the bright colors or the bold patterns, often, not always, but often, that's an indicator that they enjoy being a little bit of the spotlight. They enjoy that. They gravitate towards that. Even for men in a business setting, they will find ways to express their personality. I've seen a lot of guys that are in settings where they have to wear suits, and they manage to find really fun ties or bright colored socks. Whatever is appropriate for what's required, they'll still find a way to express personality. And for women, I use jewelry as an example. A yellow likes jewelry that is sparkly and blingy and can be seen. My motto is, if you can't see it from across the room, why bother wearing it? So I want a big, bold statement necklace, or I don't need one. I want things that sparkle and shine and can be seen. So if you see that from someone, you go, oh, that person might be a yellow. I can see pink polka dots from all the way over here. I wonder if that person's a yellow. Again, not always, but visual clues to get us thinking. Open is the next one. And this is related in a lot of ways because yellows are known for having an open mouth and an open life. We're always getting shushed. We're saying the wrong thing at the wrong time, sharing too much information, sharing it a little bit too loudly, because that's our other part of being yellow. But yellows are just open. We make friends with people in the grocery store. I have Facebook friends that I've met on airplanes, and we've kept in touch for years. It happens. Yellows can just start conversations and meet people and start sharing things. It works for them. Cluttered is our other one. I'm not as proud of this one, but this is definitely me as well. Often you can tell a yellow by the state of his or her desk, workspace, purse, briefcase, laptop bag, whatever it might be, car. If you get a glimpse in someone's car and you can see the trails of where they have been going and what they've been eating the last few days by the wrappers and cups that they've left behind, it happens. Yellows tend to have a fairly high tolerance for clutter unless there's some external factor keeping that in check. All right, take just 30 seconds, turn to someone near you and ask, who does this sound like to you? Is this you? Is this someone you work with? Go ahead, talk to someone near you. You might want to move. Don't be shy. You got Heather right here. Do you know some yellows? All right. Can you identify at least one person in your life that's a yellow personality? Yes? Pointing fingers is okay. All right, yellows aren't usually embarrassed when I do this. Yellows, raise your hand. If you self-identify, yellow sounds like you, raise your hand. Awesome, awesome. But could you all name at least one person that you work with that you're like, oh, that sounds like so-and-so? You got that person in your mind? Okay. We're going to move next to the next personality. And again, this is, not in the order of good, better, or best. It's simply in the easiest to identify. The next one on the opposite side of our chart is a blue personality. Guess why the blue's on the opposite side of the chart from the yellow? Because they're the opposite. Oh, you guys are so smart. Even on your lunch break, you're with me, you're with me. So what do you think the first identifier of a blue personality might be? Good job, quiet. Blues tend to carry themselves more quietly. They tend to want a more quiet work environment, which is interesting if yellows and blues are trying to share space. Yellows don't tend to notice background noise. You know why? They're making the background noise. But blues need it to be more quiet, or just in general more peaceful. They also tend to carry themselves more quietly and dress a little more quietly. So those more muted colors and simple, I don't want to stand out. I'm fine just kind of blending in. That's how blues will operate. The second one, I advanced too soon. You have a big hint. Remember the opposite of open? Closed. Blues tend to want to know someone a lot longer before they feel comfortable letting you into their personal life. Blues are really good at boundaries. These are my work relationships. These are my friends. I've worked for over 20 years in the wedding industry, and I see this a lot with clients, especially because that adage of opposites attract is true. So I would book these weddings with these yellow brides, and then I'd meet their grooms who are opposite personalities, and they're blue. Then it comes time to plan the wedding, and the bride, who's the yellow, has 9 bridesmaids that she wants to be in her wedding party, and her blue groom has 3 best friends that he's known since kindergarten. Blues are very loyal people, but once they decide to let you into their bubble, you're in, and you've got a friend for life. But they're much pickier. They don't share that information as freely. I used to be offended when I left a meeting if someone shook my hand instead of giving me a hug. I'm naturally a hugger. And once I started learning personalities, I was so much easier to say, oh, it's not that they didn't like me. It's not that the meeting didn't go well. They're just not huggy people. They must be a blue. They're handshake people, not huggers. That's okay. And especially in a professional world, we have to be very aware of those differences today, don't we? Neat and organized is our third one. Yes, the opposite on the chart from those of us that are more cluttered. You know that old adage, a place for everything and everything in its place? That phrase was invented by blues for yellows. It's how they think, though. This is how they want things. This is how their desk might look or their workbench might look. Everything has that place where it belongs. It makes sense to them. Where yellows are more like out of sight, out of mind. I keep everything on top of my desk because if I put it away somewhere, I'll lose it and I won't know where it is. Because I'm not naturally good at creating places for things. But they think in a more logical way, how one idea connects to another. They tend to be very deep thinkers, where yellows will just blurt the first thing that comes out. A blue might take a long time till they share something, but they have charted out all of the various options in their mind before they ever say anything. Or maybe they'll say it to one person, but they're not the ones that are naturally going to go on social media and create a poll when they want to make a decision. They're going to weigh things out really carefully. All right, talk to that person near you. Who does this sound like to you? Can you identify a blue in your life? I won't make the blues raise their hand, but just nod with me. Did anybody identify either yourself or someone that you work with as a blue personality? We know those people? All right. Hopefully, in a perfect world, every committee, every department will have a little bit of each of these personalities, because you can already see just from these first two, it's a good thing that yellows like me have blues in our lives. We need to bring balance to each other. All right, moving on to the third one. We're going to go with the reds next, and I have 3 different identifiers for you for the reds. It's a little bit harder to identify a red sometimes, but the first clue I've got for you is energy. Reds tend to be very high energy, always moving, very active, very busy. They're the people that have a lot of things packed on their to-do list. They've got a full calendar, and they're going from one activity to the next. Remember the fidget spinner craze? I think this was invented for reds because they have to be moving, and there are times when work demands that we sit still for a while, and so the fidget spinners was a good way for reds to kind of get that energy out. But they're the ones that need this. They want to be always moving. I always say you can sense the presence of a red when they enter the room. There's just something about the energy that they bring with them. The next one is bold hand gestures. This is not just stereotypes for certain ethnicities. This is something that reds do naturally. And this is hard for me to always do this part with a microphone and a clicker, but reds have a tendency to point fingers, shake fists, that kind of a thing right there. They talk with their hands. I have a red that I work with regularly who's always going in the middle of meetings, time out, because he's just got to be efficient, and he's got to get to that next point, and he's doing it with his hands, telling us what to do. Sometimes reds are misunderstood if they do something like this, or worse. People see that, and if they're not a red, they take that as somebody being angry or upset. But I'm here to tell you, friends, sometimes that is just the red default thinking position. It's our resting face. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Oh, there's that font issue I thought might happen. Practical. It's not the font that I chose, that's why it looks wonky. Please don't take a picture of that slide, I'm embarrassed. But reds make decisions based on what is practical. They are driven by efficiency. While yellows tend to have a driving need for fun and excitement and being the center of attention, and blues have this internal need for perfection and order and details, reds have a built-in need for efficiency. They're going to choose the path that is going to get the job done most efficiently, most quickly. Their eyes are on the target, which is often a good thing. Sometimes they can be a little too focused on that target. We'll talk about that more later. But in general, they're wired to set goals and do the steps needed to get there, and to get there as quickly as possible. So when you see that or feel that in someone that you work with, that's often the sign of a red personality. They measure their days according to what is accomplished. Their to-do list matters to them. And if you've got someone like me who's a red-yellow combination, not everything gets on my to-do list, so I am that person that will write the things on the list after I've done them just so I can put a check mark by them. Because we need the satisfaction of checking the things off the list, but sometimes the yellow side of me doesn't get everything on the list. All right, who does this sound like to you? Is this you? Someone you know? Does it remind you of someone?
Oh, yeah.
Yep. If you're writing people's names down that you work with, you don't need to show them to everyone, I promise. I'm not going to be asking you to submit that or turn that into a supervisor or anything like that. But I think it's a good practice. If you can identify specific people as we talk about these boxes, the application's going to come even quicker to you. All right. Reds, raise your hand if you're a red in the room. Yes, self-identify as at least half red? All right, I see some hands. Good. We've got one more personality to talk about. This is the greens, and I've had greens come up to me before after a seminar or a workshop and say, why do you always save us till the end? Again, I mean no disrespect. If I had to pick a favorite personality, you could argue that greens are my favorite because I married a green. I did not get to choose the personality of my 4 children, but I chose my husband. And his green is an amazing balance for my crazy red and my yellow mix. So it's a great balance. So we're going to talk about greens, but they are a little bit harder to identify. Where yellows tend to be extremely loud and open, and blues tend to be extremely quiet and organized, and reds tend to be extremely busy and focused and on the go, greens tend to not be extremely anything. They're just not extreme. So the number one identifier for a green is process of elimination. If you're looking at someone and saying, I don't know if they really fit into this box or this box or this box, it's very likely they could be a green. Or the flip side of that, if they seem to fit a little bit in every box, that's the chameleon side of being a green. Greens have an amazing ability to take on the traits of the other personality colors for a while. Depending on what a certain situation or a certain relationship calls for, they can kind of channel a certain trait that they need to succeed and get through that meeting, that event, that whatever it is, that dynamic that you've got to work with for a certain time. But then when it's over, they'll kind of retreat back to what's comfortable. But it's an amazing ability that greens have to do this pretty easily. They're very adaptable. Comfort is another identifying trait. Yes, I just said greens they do what they need to do, but then they want to retreat back to what's comfortable. Greens like to be comfortable. And they tend to be the most aware of other people and what's going to make other people around them comfortable. I've done unofficial experiments when I've done trainings, and when I've worked with groups of nurses and groups of counselors, the number of greens in the room, usually about 75%. A lot of greens do gravitate towards service fields. So if you are in some kind of situation that has you working with the public, this is a great skill to have because you are very naturally intuitive and aware of what makes someone feel comfortable. In terms of identifying people, though, greens are often the most casually dressed in the room for whatever is appropriate for that situation. They'll be on the casual end of what's acceptable. They're often the first ones to sit down when everyone else is still standing. If you've got some kind of a networking event like that, they're the ones that are going to be comfortable, and they'll find that one person they already know and want to hang out with them the rest of the time. I heard it, that's me. I quit bringing my husband to networking things. As I mentioned before, we run our own business, and I used to bring him to networking events, and he's so green, he would do that. He would go find the one person that we already knew and hang out with them for 3 hours. And meanwhile, my yellow-red self over here, I've been working the whole room, and I've met 17 new people and gotten all these new business cards and made connections. I'm like, why did I bring you? You just came and got the free drinks and just sat in the corner and talked to one person the whole time. But it's comfortable for them. The pace that greens choose to keep, what's comfortable and natural to a green, is not always what is comfortable to other personalities, especially who do you think is going to have the most challenging time with this? Reds. Yeah, the opposite personality. Remember on the chart, they're opposite on the chart for a reason. If you've got that dynamic in your department where you've got greens and reds working together, this can be a challenge. I watched one of my good friends who I've done personality training for his whole staff. He hired an office manager who was a green personality, and he is the reddest red that I know. And while she was steady and loyal and great with the clients, she was never going to be able to operate at the pace that he was expecting of her. And after 2 years, they agreed it was in her best interest for her to move on to a different role in the company and to not be managing the office anymore. I knew that from the minute I saw her resume, and he didn't listen. But pacing is an interesting thing to look at with greens. And then the last one I want to mention is just the cool, calm, and collected. That's kind of the nature of the green. Their inner need is for peace. They are the natural peacemakers. I mentioned my husband is a green. This is an interesting dynamic in our home because there are times when he is so laid back I get frustrated. And he'll look at me and be like, it's okay, it's not a big deal. And then that makes my red yellow self go, of course it's a big deal. Why are you overreacting? Why are you underreacting? I'm just reacting enough for the both of us because you're not saying anything. And then the personality trainer goes, hello, that's why he's in your life. You need each other. Yeah, he could tend to react a little bit more, but that's not my job to make him react. I have to learn from him and realize, yeah, I probably could have handled that differently with our kids. So whether it's home or in business, with your staff, with your department, with your employees, we do have lessons that we can learn from those opposite personality types. All right, real quick, greens. Who do you know that's a green? Is this you? Were you waiting to have your color identified? Or is this someone you know? Did you identify at least one green that you work with? Yes? All right. Does anyone want to share an observation that you've had so far? Anybody have one of those light bulbs about yourself or a work situation that you could share without putting anyone on the spot or making them feel uncomfortable? Or a question for me up until this point? Anything? It's all been crystal clear and just all kinds of things have opened up. All right, let me come back there.
I would say that I saw more pieces of colors in people than one specific color.
All right, good, good. Yes, a lot of people get to this point and they're like, yeah, some people are pretty solid, like they have definitely one strong box, and other people you're like, oh, I see this and I see this. That's a good thing. And there's a couple explanations. One is that we're not meant to fit in one box. And most people have a primary and a secondary personality. If I'm just telling you that, do you feel like, oh yeah, I could see I've got a top two for sure? Yes? Most people have that. And the other thing that you see, and especially if we're applying this to our professional situation, hopefully you've got the right people in the right seats on the bus, and they're operating in a job that is a good fit for their personality. And if they're succeeding in that, and there's something that is not natural, hopefully they're developing what I call learned skills. So it may be that, for example, when I had a shared office situation and my desk was visible to the public, I had to keep my desk clean. I had to work at it really hard because that's not natural to me, but I could do it because that's what that situation required. That didn't mean that all of a sudden I became a blue personality when I had that manager position. It just meant that I had some learned skills that I had to put into place. So hopefully you're seeing people's learned skills in conjunction with their natural personalities, if it's the people that you work with, and hopefully you're seeing people putting their best foot forward. Because sometimes we get caught into what's comfortable. Any parents in the room? We see this a lot, right, where our kids behave really well out in public sometimes, and teachers and friends will say, oh, your son or your daughter is such an angel, and I'm like, that kid? Well, I'm really glad that they fake it well in public because you should see them at home. But it's the same thing. Hopefully we're doing our best at work and we're remembering to not, blurt things out like our yellow would, but we're asking more intuitive questions that a blue would need, and we're learning some things from those opposite personalities. And again, this is not a perfect science. It's what I call part science, part art. There's a lot of science behind it, but everyone is their own unique blend. And that's the other reason I like the color illustration. We talked about how there's different shades and there's different blends. I'm probably a pretty even 50-50 split between yellow and red. And in some situations and in some relationships, I am more red. Like when I'm with my green husband, my red really shines. But when I'm with my red business partner, I look like the yellow in the room because he's even more red than I am. So we can change a little bit, but at our core, we are who we are. Does that make sense, or did I muddle the colors even more? Did that help? Okay, all right. Let's move on a little bit to a leadership focus. I know that's the reason a lot of you are here is because you're either leading a team or a department, or you have someone that looks to you for a leadership role. So I want to take a little bit of time and just kind of go through the personalities one by one and talk about potential strengths and weaknesses. Because my goal here is not to convince you that you need to become a different personality. I want you to identify your own personality and be able to say, okay, wow, this is who I am. This is my primary personality type. These are my strengths that I am naturally good at. This is what I bring to the table. When I volunteer for a committee or when I take on a project, this is what I do without even thinking about it. This is where I shine. These are the kind of roles that I want to be in. And then there's other side of us that we don't like to talk about as much. It's not as fun to admit that we have weaknesses. But there are things that don't come naturally. Nobody's ever good at everything naturally. People have to work at something. For me, it's the details. I'm not great at details. So in my business, I have to work with a bookkeeper who helps keep things on track. Because my employees, even though I have a really fun company and a fun job, if they didn't get paid on time, and they didn't get paid the right amount, and they didn't have the equipment they needed to do their jobs, they wouldn't stick around. And that would be hard for my business. So I have to find people that balance out my weaknesses. So I have to be honest with myself about what they are. So let's go through. This is going to be the time where you can kind of shout things out. I'll bring the microphone when I can because I know they're filming and I want to make sure things get picked up. But let's just go through one at a time and talk about, just from the little bit of time that we've spent going over the personalities, what do you see as the strengths and weaknesses? And let's start with yellow. What are the natural strengths and weaknesses of that personality type? Go ahead, shout some things out. Morale. They're good at keeping morale up. Yep, they can keep people's spirits high. They're good motivators. What else? Connected. Yeah, they're great at involving people and making new connections. What else? Ideas. They're very creative. Good. What about some possible weaknesses? Annoying. Especially to people that aren't yellows. And what's annoying about them? Well, they can get distracted very easily. They're really easy to get off task. They're the squirrel people, right? So that's annoying to the people that want to focus. If you've got a red and a blue that are trying to work towards this certain task, and your yellow is all over the place, and your green's not going to speak up and say anything, you've got a challenge. Yellows are great at the big picture, and they're good with making friends. They're also terrible with names. Yellows have to really work hard to learn people's names, so that can be really awkward if you have the same person that comes into your office and, you know, once a month they stop by for whatever and you don't remember their name. You have to work at that. All right. What about blues? What are the natural strengths that blues bring to the table? Attention to detail. Organized. What else? They complete projects. Good. Yellows are great at getting things started, but then if a more fun project comes along, they might jump onto that committee or that project instead. But blues are good finishers. What else? They can be efficient. Blues tend to be perfectionists, which in some situations is good, but how might that become a potential weakness? Overthinking things. They can be too critical. Sometimes blues have such high standards for themselves and others that nothing is ever good enough. Have you heard the phrase analysis paralysis? Where you're thinking about something so much and it's never quite perfect, it's never quite all the way done, so you never launch the new program or the new system because you're still trying to perfect it. That can be a challenge. So blues need to be aware, yes, attention to detail is a good thing, But when you take it too far, it can become a negative. How about greens? Strengths that they bring, potential challenges that you see. Peacemakers. Every group needs a peacemaker, don't they? They're steady. Good one. What else? They're loyal. You give them a job, they'll do it. They may not always be self-motivated. They tend to need more direction than some personalities. But if you give them the direction, they can be very good at completing it. So what are those other challenges if you have a green? Or do you have another strength? They're good at working in diverse situations. They get along with lots of different kinds of people. Yeah. Sometimes, though, I think with most of these strengths, if you take them too far, because greens they want to hear everybody's idea, and they're good at being respectful and open, but they can have trouble making decisions. So sometimes that can be a real challenge if you are the leader and you're so focused on making sure that everybody else is happy. If the buck stops with you, you have to be willing to make a decision. And that can be a struggle for those green personalities. All right. Any other questions or specific situations that you're thinking about in your mind? Because I know there's a lot of different types of jobs represented in the room. I mean, yes, you all work for the county, but I'm sure you all do many different things. Something that you want to share or ask about how this is relevant to what you do when we leave here today and you go back to your regular life after this? Yeah. How is this relevant? What do you do? What's your job?
I'm the department nerd.
The department nerd. Every nerd needs one of those. And where do you self-identify on the chart? What color? Mostly yellow and a touch of red, which is not the stereotypical department nerd, right? When we think IT people, we tend to think people that are on the blue side, right? So if you have those natural skills and you've got the personality of a yellow-red, I think that's awesome, because one of your strengths, if you're a natural extrovert and you're good at communicating with different kinds of people, and you can maybe even make boring stuff kind of fun to understand, when you go to fix somebody's problem, you probably have a better shot at explaining it in a way that they can understand than someone who, you know, is a blue and isn't naturally as good at putting their words out there. They're more of an internal processor. So that's a really cool thing that you have that strength. Cool. Anybody else want to bring it back to your specific situation, what you do and how this might be helpful to you? I hope this just means that there's some internal processing going on, and that's okay. I know we're cramming a lot into a lunch break, but I feel like learning this particular system over all of the other ones that I've learned, this is why I got certified to teach this training. This is the one that's had the most impact on every area of my life. I see my employees differently. I see my family differently. And I'm not perfect. I just mentioned, you know, there are times, especially at home, when I get really frustrated and I blow up because I'm the red mom and this is the system and you're not following the system and your name was on the chore chart for this day and why didn't you do it? And I can learn from my green counterpart. And the same is true with our work environments. If we take some time to look at who we are and how we lead and how we communicate and how we can really create the best environment for the people that are around us, I think that's a good thing. I know I've thrown a lot at you, but I want you to make sure that you at least have the basics in your mind. So let's just do a quick review. And I didn't point this out specifically, but I want the colors to be pretty easy to remember. So yellow, think sunshiny, loud, right? That's the one. When you see somebody walk into your office and they've got that high energy, smiley vibe, if you can try to match that level of energy with them and that positivity that they bring, that's going to help that communication. Even if you're not a natural yellow, if you recognize that you're speaking to one and you can mirror that and reflect that energy and personality in a way that's not like awkward or creepy. I'm not talking about like being them in a mimicky kind of way, but just matching the energy level, that's a good thing. If somebody comes in and they're quiet and reserved and they lower their voice and you're not naturally that way, I have this self-talk and I have to tell myself, oh, you better match them. You better start, if you know you have a meeting with someone ahead of time, that's different too. That'd be a good day to skip the caffeine. For real. If you normally operate up here and you know you've got a meeting with a certain person and that they're a blue, you don't need to come in all high, because what was the very first comment we heard about yellows? They can be annoying, right? So set yourself up for success by walking into the situation as prepared as possible if you can. If you've got someone that comes in and you can tell they're a red, they walk in, they've got their checklist and okay, this is what I need to know. Skip the small talk. Reds don't need small talk. They're just the facts people. So respect their time too. If you know you're working with a red, be on time, because time matters to everyone, but it's even more important to those reds because they're just barely fitting you into their schedule. Their schedule is packed. And if you can wrap up that meeting 5 minutes early, that's a gift. Don't waste their time. I'm not saying be rude, but they don't need the small talk. Now, if you're the red, you might need to practice making small talk. You might need to practice. So how are you? How was your weekend? You might need to work a little bit harder at trying to care. It doesn't come natural to you, but you can train yourself to do that. So you need to just look at those relationships that you deal with and say, what do I need to take from this to make the best situation I can out of the personalities that are in this department, team, office, whatever your specific situation might be. What about the greens? What can you do to keep a green happy? Consistency. Do what you said you're going to do. Don't raise your voice at them. Approach conflict carefully. Nobody loves conflict, but reds aren't as afraid of it. But greens, they're the peacemakers. So think about those peaceful green meadows, and what can you do to create peace in that situation, because that's going to matter to those people even more. All right. No matter who you meet, if you start training yourself to say, can I see any clues? Can I make an educated guess as to what color personality this person is? And how can I use that educated guess to serve them better, to create a better, more comfortable environment for that individual? You will see things change in a good way. It takes practice. Hopefully I've given you the tools on this lunch break, but yes, you're going to need to practice. It takes time, but I want you to see the world like Dorothy does. I want you to start seeing your whole office and everyone that comes in it in full color. That concludes the formal part of the presentation. I did want to take a few minutes to talk about Toastmasters. I didn't know Chris was going to give such a lovely introduction for that, but I can tell that you guys are here because you want to keep moving forward. You came voluntarily, best I can tell. You signed up for this and gave up your lunch break to be here, and I know that that means that you care about your personal and professional growth. And for me, Toastmasters has been a huge part of my personal and professional growth. I get paid to travel and speak and give presentations and seminars all over. And I want my paying clients to get the best me. I want my audiences like you to get the best version of me. So I practice on my Toastmasters Club. I've told some of these stories to my Toastmasters Club. When I'm working on a new illustration that I'm going to try to work into a seminar or a workshop, I practice on them. It's a safe place to learn and grow. No matter where you are on the spectrum of, I love public speaking, I wish she would have given me the mic more often, to, oh my God, I can't believe she even looked at me, I would never want to do that, Toastmasters is not just about standing up in front of the room and being handed a microphone. In fact, we don't even use microphones in the room, I promise. It's about communication. And the skills are the skills to communicate, whether you're talking to one person or you're talking to a room of people like this. So communication and leadership, those are the things that we work on in Toastmasters. My friend Heather is here. Heather, raise your hand. Heather is currently serving as the president of our Washoe Express Toastmasters Club. And we're both here to answer any questions about Toastmasters. If you've just wondered what it's like or what we do, now is your chance. Ask a question and we will answer it. And you can even get some information before you decide if you want to set foot in the room. But I promise we're not a scary bunch of people. Any thoughts, questions about Toastmasters? I saw hands that knew what it was but had never been. Anything we can answer? Yes. Where do we meet? We meet in the little conference room. The name on the door is the Slide Mountain Conference Room, but I don't know how many people actually call it that. But if you go upstairs and keep walking toward the building and zoning, it's that last conference room on the left. Does that make sense? So in this building, but upstairs and down the hall. In fact, I think, oh no, I didn't. I just had the time. Okay. So yeah, Thursdays on our lunch break, you can just come and hang out with me and Heather and meet a bunch of other cool people. And anything else you want to know about Toastmasters? Yeah. Yes, you can just come and visit anytime. We'd encourage you to try to plan to stay for the whole meeting. Our meetings do follow an agenda and they're pretty structured, and we'd love for you to stay the whole time. So not like pop in and just sit for 5 or 10 minutes and then leave, but you don't have to sign up in advance. If you're just, hey, I can go today, please come and be our guest and see what the meeting is like. Yeah. Anything else? All right. Well, if you're that blue or green and you have a question and you're still processing it and you want to ask us later, Heather and I are going to stick around. We also have some little business cards that are on that back table that have our meeting information on them. And I'm pretty easy to find. I'll go back to this other screen. If you want to find me, you can, if you spell my name like I do, I'm the only one on social media like that. It's the one perk of having a weird name. You can put a .com after it. You can search me on Amazon. And you can find a way to reach me if you want to know more, or you can just come and hang out with me here on a Thursday. So thank you so much for spending your lunch break with me. It's been a fun time, and I hope you learned something too.
Thank you so much, Vickie. Every time I see Vickie speak, I learn something new. She gave you the information for the Toastmasters meetings on Thursdays, every Thursday except for federal holidays. If you would like more information and you're watching this not here in the room today, you're welcome to contact me, Chris Riley, last name spelled R-I-L-E-Y. I can spell my last name. I am a Toastmaster. Thank you very much. Please look forward to some more information from the Washoe Talks series. We'll be announcing our next speaker and date, so keep your eyes out for that. The Training, Learning, and Leadership Committee will also be doing a book club program. We're tentatively set to do that discussion on June 20th. You'll be receiving more information here soon. We thank you all for coming today. Love to answer any of your questions you might have afterwards. Thanks for spending your lunch hour with us.